Okay. Hey there, strangers. It's time for another 2 p.m. PST Twitch stream. I'm your host, Stranger Jim, and today we are going to be getting back into Pega. Um, well, we're starting off with Pega anyway. Okay. Um, like normal, first hour is going to be studying the topics that Pega gives. I'm currently working towards the certification for System Architect. Um, you know, as you can see, I'm on the mission for System Architect here. I'm going to be working towards the certification for it because I've not gotten it yet, and I really want to. Um, because um, my last job was all about Pega, so I want to try to stay in that particular field. Um, I mean, if people are hiring in it, then and I'd want to have a certification there so that, you know, I have that on my resume to potentially get hired. So, working towards that. Um, there's also the business architect that also comes along with, for the most part, for a good majority of the system architect is, pretty much the business architect as well. There's going to be two separate modules at the end after two like there's these two missions, low code app builder and like here let me go to the system architect and show what's going on here. So um, so for the system architect mission, you have these first two missions here, the low code app builder and low code app builder extended. What's interesting about this is the fact that, there are some modules that I'm completing here that is also being completed here. However, um, the the business architect, they have these first two missions, the low code app builder and low code app builder extended, but they only have two modules after that, and then they have the quiz that they give for the business analyst. So um, they don't go into in depth for Dev Studio, creating a rule, application data manipulation, or anything along those lines. Okay, this is all system architect modules and challenges that I'm going to be working through. So I could do the business architect. Here, matter of fact, let me show the business architect. Let me switch on over there. Okay, so we have, I have both the missions saved so that I could kind of show that off a little bit. The business architect, you see here two missions, two modules, right? So like I said, has the low code app builder and low code app builder extended. And then it has two modules after that, and then it has the mission test after that. Okay. Um, Now this is kind of their recommended, but let's face it, their certification tests could be a little bit more challenging. They can be worded differently, so you're gonna have to be prepared for um, knowing the modules kind of inside and out. Knowing what you can see, what you can't see, so on and so forth, right? So, um, but the business architect is more designed for those that haven't really had any like major programming experience. Okay, so if you haven't had any programming experience in the past, like you've never done any kind of major coding or anything along those lines, you don't know C, you don't know C++, Java, or any of those other coding languages. If you don't know any of that, then the business architect is more in line with you. Okay, because um, it's meant to be more business oriented in the sense that the business architect is meant to be the bridge between just a pure business, the ones that are just handling ads and um, you know, uh, shoppers and so on and so forth, trying to figure out, the best things for your customers. Okay, side of things, those business. And then you have, the programmers, the system architects, those that are, very logically minded, that are just trying to, build, applications, websites, databases, so on and so forth, right? Okay. It can be really difficult to talk between those two groups, okay? Because on one side, you typically have like more extroverted individuals, and then on the other side with the programming group, you have more introverts. Not to say that there aren't extroverts on in programming and introverts on the business, but I'm just putting that out there that um and uh when you talk with those two groups, sometimes it's very difficult to there's lingo on both teams. So um over on the programming side, if you start you know um talking about binary trees um and using a lot of mathematical equations to deal with um the what you need to you know uh, what data you can handle and so on and so forth, that kind of thing, you know then you might confuse some people in business. Not all. I'm not going to say that not everybody in business doesn't know everything that I'm talking about. I mean, I'm sure that there are some that do. um, I remember in college, I helped out a couple of my friends that were um, that had that needed to have that programming class, even though that they weren't programmers, they were still like engineers. um, so I helped them out on that. So um, so like I said, I'm not gonna say that all the business people don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm sure there's probably a couple out there that do. That they might have had a programming course or something like that. Maybe they were programmers in the past and switched professions. Who knows? Okay, you know I'm not gonna judge along those lines, right? It's really bad too. Um, so, um, but the business architect is more designed for those that are more in line with business than they are with technology, kind of thing. It's meant to bridge the gap between the two. Okay. They'll talk with the business, find out what the business wants, and then talk to the programmers and kind of convey to them, what do we need to do to get this program working the way they want it. Okay. So that's kind of what the business architect is kind of about. Okay. So, um, so yeah, that's why, um, if you're not a coder, this is ideal for you, typically. Okay. Not to say that you can't do the system architect. Okay. Just know that once we start getting into the Dev Studio overview, creating rules, application data manipulation, it starts getting a little bit more program heavy, programming heavy. So just bear that in mind. So, okay. But today we are going to be covering capturing and presenting data on the low-code app builder. And then there's a couple topics here that they say are fairly lengthy, so we'll see how far we can get on this. Hopefully I won't have any major issues the way I had with the last module with the module data. Like I mentioned before, I'm probably going to need to redo that one so that I can try to understand what they're getting at. But all those videos are on my YouTube channel, so feel free to check those out if you want. Um, you know, uh, would love to have some insight on that. So if there is any, this isn't this isn't what's the word I'm looking for? Um, this isn't endorsed by Pega at all. This is just my own process. I'm not a trainer, so if someone actually wants to get into an instructor-led training, do so. Okay. I mean, it does cost money, obviously, to be trained by a professional, but I mean, that's, you know, so don't expect high tier training from me because I'm going to be looking at it and going, there's some things that I don't really know. Um, hopefully your instructor-led training is better. Um, my instructor-led training was not that great. He wasn't really answering our questions when we asked him, and well, he also brought in other people to do his own job. So yeah, that's the reason why you know I I had no real respect for the man. Uh, so yeah, hence the reason why I didn't really do very well on my first attempt at the certification. Yes, I have taken it before. Um, I missed a couple more questions than a minimum, um, which, obviously I failed. Um, so, I need to go back through everything and check, try to redo it and try to work on my areas on where I was weak, especially for the certification. Now, hopefully the certification is a little bit better this time because last time I took it, there was a lot of 7.0 questions, a lot of topics talking about, hey, um, you know, here's some wording from 7.0 and earlier or something like that. And I was like, wait a minute, I've never seen this keyword before. What are you talking about? I've never seen it at all. You're, you know, you're talking gibberish at this point. Now, I tried to answer it the best I could, but I mean, hard to, they are very specific to their language. They're very, uh, they can be quite confusing along those lines when it comes to their questions. So, um, be warned. Be warned on that one. So, all right, let's go ahead and head into fields. Fields. Pega platform applications collect and process important case data. By defining the fields that are displayed at runtime, you can collect information from users or present case information for review. For example, when providing search criteria to book accommodations, users enter each search criteria in a separate field. The criteria return results that are displayed as read-only information. Each field is a named, reusable UI component. Each field stores a unique value that is associated with a case. The combination of the field name and the stored value defines a data element in a case. For example, a field name metro area and a value of Boston would make up one data element. So bear that in mind. A field and a value is a data element. Okay, so most likely that will come up again during the certification, um, or something along those lines. So when you create a field, you also assign a field type. Field type identifies the type of information that is stored in the system. By assigning a field type, you ensure that the users provide valid information in the field and that the system displays data in the correct format. For example, a field named metro area would be assigned a field type of text. Store the value Boston as shown in the following booking form. So Boston is a text. Arrival date is a date. A number of guests is an integer. Price per night is currency. Checking your knowledge with the following interaction. You use the field type to identify the type of information that is stored in the system. That's true. You know, if it was just you use the field to identify the type of information, then that's incorrect. Okay. Um, each field has a type. We kind of saw that last time, but they didn't really address the types. So hopefully they do right now, seeing that they're really kind of covering this quite a bit right at the moment. But we'll see. Here we go. It's right there. Simple field types. In Pega platform, you can assign a simple field type to a field. The following table shows a list of simple field types and the information each type stores. So text, a single line. A single line of text, or is. Okay. Now here's the thing. How long is the single line? You know, um, they really should kind of address that a little bit. Like how many characters do they consider is in a single line? Um, you know, one could assume that, this right here is a single line of text. Maybe it's just because, you get to a period. But as you can see here, there's no period in the last name. I mean, why would there be, right? But um, normally you reference, how many characters, you know, are in a text field. So they probably should kind of address that a little bit. Like what is the minimum and what is the maximum characters for the type of data, you know, in here. So, what's the minimum, what's the maximum? Because you kind of need to know that information, on some of this information that they're presenting. But we'll move on. Now, for those of you that are like in business, then hopefully you're understanding what I'm kind of talking about in terms of the number of characters. Um, if you're not really understanding, um, let me try to explain it a little bit better. Okay, or let me explain. So a character that I'm referring to is a single entry. Okay, I'm not going to say it's a single. Um, I'm not going to say that it's a single alphabet. You know, because the the thing with a character type in programming is that it typically refers to everything. There's like a full-on list of all types of characters, and it can even go into um, letters in other languages. Chinese, Japanese, so on and so forth. You know, um, So, those letters also have their own unique characters, that can be represented. Okay. So, um, so like for example here, if I highlight all this, you know, ANYSI, right? Now, someone might say, oh, that's five characters. But you're wrong. You're incorrect. That's actually six because the space here is also a character. So that's why that's so important. How much characters is in a single line of text. Hey there, Bigfoot. How you doing there, bud? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so next portion of this here is text paragraph. Large text box that accepts multiple lines of text. So once again, I'm kind of wondering, how many characters do they consider on this? Now, one has to make the assumption that, with multiple lines of text, you're talking with a, more of a maximum number than the single line, right? So this could be like 256 characters. This could be 25,000, or something along those lines. Okay, you notice here that there's more characters here than in their example there. But again, I don't know how many are available. They should address that, but they're not, so we'll have to move on. Boolean allows users to select a checkbox to indicate one of two possible responses. Checkmark, I am already a member. Now, this isn't exactly a good explanation of what a Boolean is. I mean, yes, it's true, select a checkbox, but I mean that's what they kind of show. But a Boolean is, you know, typically, the one to two possible responses, true or false, 0 and 1, um, positive, negative, that kind of thing. So that's what Boolean is is a representative of, kind of thing. So when you checkbox this, I am already a member, you're basically saying, hey, this is a true statement. If you didn't have that checked off, then it would be a false statement. I'm already a member. Nope, that's false. That kind of thing. So think of booleans are more true false than anything else, really. Okay, so um, or 0 being false, 1 being true. There's various ways of kind of looking at a boolean. Believe me, when you look at programming in other languages, you know, um, they might have like different ways of approaching a boolean or how it kind of is represented. So, okay, currency. Currency code and value are stored based on the default currency type. So right there, they're showing, dollars, $234.99, right? But here's the thing. With currency, you can actually set it up for like different nationalities. Okay. Right now, they're showing the currency in, for America, or any other state, any other countries that has this dollar sign, you know, for their own. It doesn't have to be America. I believe there's a couple other countries that use this kind of formatting for their currency as well. I'm not quite sure exactly all of them, but I know that there's a couple. Um, but um, but let's face it, if you're building an application in, say, Europe, you know, and you try to use this kind of format, they're going to be like, "What the hell are you doing? Huh? you know, where's the euros?" they're gonna slap the heck out of you, right? So currency can be set for where the application is based out of. So you don't have to worry too much about that, but obviously they'll deal with that, they'll talk about that a little bit more later, but just know that, you know, if you look at this and you're like, so it's only American? No, no, they accounted for that, so don't stress. Okay, date and time. UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, value normalized to Greenwich Mean Time. Date automatically displays in a localized format. So, as you can see, 12/1/2020, 9:30 a.m. Obviously, you can change this to the standard 24-hour format that the rest of the world uses, not here in America. You could look at it as date, month, and year. The rest of, like I said, how the rest of the world views dates. So, um, make um, if you're having an application that is um, worldwide, international application, right? You want to try to set it up so that it's localized in the area that it's in its regional area, right? So if a person is using it in say Japan, it's kind of formatted for you know standard Japanese format. Now they could always like change it to like American format if they wanted to, kind of thing. But or at least it'd probably be a good idea for the programmer to give them that option to make those changes. But obviously that's we're we're going way off base on here. we're going beyond what is being done here. So, all right, date only. So calendar date with a localized format, 2/15/1955. Now, obviously, if you look at this, if you're thinking that this is date and this is date, this is month, and this is year, then well, where, where are you at? You're not on Earth. you know, um, sorry, there's no 15 months in standard Earth calendar. So, you'd have to be like, living on Mars or something like that, with a longer year. Um, but the you know you know month, day, year, and obviously can change that around based off of localized format. So okay, decimal numbers with a fractional component. Use this field type when fractions are needed. Fractions are interesting. I don't know. I mean, if fractions is correct, um, in the in mathematics. So, I mean, they're not wrong. I'm just not sure if that, um, you know, I don't normally hear fractions when it comes to the decimal places. Um, so I'm not sure if that's something that was, described like in our country and kind of used here, or if it's just kind of commonly used fractional, and I'm just stupid. I don't know. I mean, it's not wrong, because you're talking about, um, you know, zero point 0.6 of a single unit. So, 60% of a, single unit, whatever, however you want to kind of look at it. But so decimal is basically used for, like if you wanted, not necessarily use currency per se, but, if you want to have some kind of decimal place with multiple decimal digits afterwards. Um, so use that, if you want to. Now, um, I've often heard, but I haven't really seen it in practice. I've often heard that you typically don't want to use decimals for um, very important um, like um, like medical or financial. You want to use it too much for that. You want to just use pure integers for both the whole and the decimal. From what I understand. Okay. Again, I haven't personally seen it in action before, so um, but I know people have mentioned the fact that like decimal and currency hasn't been um, you know completely accurate um, in their values. So most people tend to use you know integers to handle both the whole numbers and the decimals to handle very critical numbers and calculations and the like. So just bear that in mind. Um, that could be, you could see that, you know, um, or you could potentially see that, like someone is using two integers for the whole and the decimal. Okay, but again, it's typically for fields that where um, they really want to be super accurate on their uh, numerical calculations. So, but email. A valid email format with a @ symbol. An email field is an action-oriented control, meaning the value stored in the field is displayed as a link. For an email, the link initiates user's default email application. Users at example.com. Um, you know, this is interesting that the link initiates the user's default email application. So, for example, if you have, say, Outlook for your email application, if you click on the Pega's email, you know, if you basically click on this, for example, in Pega, you know, they basically say that it will open up the user's Outlook to send an email out to um, that email address. So bear that in mind um, if you do want to um, display the email address, be careful that maybe you don't necessarily want the user clicking on this at all. Maybe you want to store it as a text single line. I mean, you could do that too. Um, but just bear that in mind. Maybe you take the field as an email and then you maybe display it later as a text single line or something along those lines. Just putting that out there. Okay. An integer. A positive and negative whole numbers, including the zero and including the value 0. So you could have -3, you could have 0, you could have +3, you know, whatever, whatever you want, but it has to be whole numbers. Okay. So no decimal points. So um, just kind of bear that in mind. Um, I never memorized the um, how far a integer can go to. Um, like I can't remember uh, the the negative number and the positive, the maximum minimum of an integer. Um, I'm thinking it's like 2 to the 64, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, like I said, I don't have it memorized, but it can be a fairly large number. But, as we all well know, when you're dealing with, you know, um, calculations like you're trying to measure how far the next star is, or something along those lines. You might need to figure out that distance in, say, kilometers, and well, the integer might not get and might not allow for that high of a number, depending on distance, right? So, um, there are, um, there are other like, integer types in other programming languages. So I don't know if they address that in integer, if they allow for, like a long integer in integer itself. I don't know, but they're not stating anything here for the time being, so we're just gonna move on because I mean it's they're showing a simple field type right now. So what I'm talking about is not as common, so yeah. Okay, percentage. Positive and negative decimal numbers entered as a decimal and displayed as a percentage. For example, zero point 0.5 displays as 50%. So, as you can see, 8% or 0.08. Um, this might be more for display purposes. If you want more like calculation based, then you can always just set, you can always use decimal if you really want to for more calculations. You know, you don't I mean um, you still might want to use percentage if you want to try to do some calculations, but that's up to you. Um, just be careful that the calculations might not be that accurate potentially. I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, simple calculations might be perfectly fine, but if you start getting into, digits that are like, 63.3333333 or something along those lines, and you're trying to like multiply that with, something else, then is your number going to be completely accurate? I'm not sure. Maybe. One would hope, right? All right. Phone. Digits display in localized format. A phone field is an action-oriented control, meaning the value stored in the field displays as a link. Now, why it displays as a link, I don't really know. But, for example, if users access the application on a mobile device, the phone number link initiates a phone call. Now, that might be dangerous. um, you might not necessarily want your customers, um, making phone calls, you know, out of the blue or something along those lines. Or maybe you do. Maybe you have like a map application that shows like business locations, right? And so, you might want to display that business, their address, and their phone number, and allow for the customer to actually click on that phone number and initiate a phone call. That's perfectly reasonable. Okay. Um, maybe you have an address book or something like that, or a phone book, Um, but um, maybe you just want to show, um, maybe you just want to like show information, not necessarily have people have, I mean, you can, I mean, if you're displaying a phone number, then obviously you're giving people the possibility of calling that number anyway, right? Um, but maybe you don't necessarily want them to have to make it easy for someone either. Um, you know, there might be like a rare case where you don't necessarily want that to happen, or not allow for that to happen, I should say. So obviously, if you're in the business, if you're doing a business and stuff like that, you're gonna need to know, do do you want this to happen? Do you want that to be allowed, or do you want to try to make sure that that's not possible? So you kind of have to be careful with that. So, maybe maybe you want to um, have the information taken, like you have the user enter the information and it's set up at, for a phone number, in a localized format, or maybe, um, and, maybe displayed in a text later or something like that. Who knows? So that's something that you'll have to figure out in your application. All right, next one, pick list. A list of predefined values. So it's showing red, yellow, and blue. So, the pick list is kind of um, it's, I mean, they have, drop downs or whatnot. But it's kind of meant to show, like, hey, if you have multiple values in, you know, kind of contained in one, you know, object in one list. Okay, um, so you can obviously define, what's in that pick list and what's in that list. So you can define it, and obviously you can modify, how you want the user to interact with said pick list. Maybe you just want them to show the values. Maybe you want them to actually select it with a radial. Maybe you want it to have, like a checkbox list or something like that. You know, this that could be possible. So, uh, so this time only should have been like up here with the date and time, but it's basically the same thing as the date time. Date only. You have the time only. Right there. I mean, they put this in alphabetical order, but I mean, well, actually, no, they didn't. So, I don't know why they didn't put the time up there, but whatever. Um, UTC coordinated universal time value normalized to Greenwich mean time. So, yeah. And obviously, you can modify that however you want to locally and so on and so forth. So, URL or web address. A URL field is an action-oriented control, meaning the value stored in the field displays as a link. For a URL, the link initiates the user's default browser and opens the target web page. So there you go. Now, one has to be a little bit careful here because I've seen some applications where if you click on a link, like here on Windows, for example, it doesn't open the user's default browser. The application refers to like the Windows browser, or there's like a specific value that Windows set up so that um, so if someone clicks on that link, it'll open up the Windows default will, which was Edge, and it's like, wait, but my default browser is like Firefox or Chrome. What are you doing? Why are you bringing up Edge? I'm looking at you, Twitter. But they say, hey, we don't know if someone's gonna update the the default browser, or we don't know if they even have that set up. So we use this, Windows, um, Windows value so that it will, because Windows always has Edge, and it's like, okay, sure. I mean, I for anybody that doesn't really know, like, hey, if you don't know how to handle downloading a browser, or setting the default browser or something along those lines, then sure, I guess. Not everybody's like a computer whiz or anything along those lines, but give us a damn choice. You know, let I have my default browser set up. Don't open up Edge. Don't want to use Edge. All right. But yeah. Once again, you don't necessarily need to have the URL. You could display it as a text later if you really want to, but that's available. And then you have user reference. Enter or select a user ID that exists in the system. The drop-down or search field shows a list of every operator mapped to your current application rule. Now this is a little more complex than your you know simple field types up here. So I'm hoping that they address this a little bit more in the future, because it doesn't look like, no, they didn't go in depth on that. So um so I mean, obviously they're trying to be very succinct in their explanation on that, but at the same time that might be, you know, someone might look at this and go, wait, what? You know, um, enter or select a user ID that exists in the system. Okay, well, what do you mean by user ID? You know, um, what user ID is it referring to? Is it referring to, um, who's using the Pega App Studio? Are you referring to the user ID for the customer, for the worker, for managers? All the above. You know, and is it is it only user ID, or is it you know or is it some other like object that you can map to a user reference? I don't know. I'm just kind of putting that out there. You know, that there's some unanswered questions in my mind for user reference on this particular instance right at this time. I feel like they could really use more clarification on this one, because this isn't as simple as, say, an integer, in my mind anyway. Okay, because you're talking about application rules, for example, and we haven't even gone into application rules, or we haven't even gone into rules. You know, at least I believe. Hold on, let me verify that real quick. Don't think we've got into rules yet in the low-code app builder, or if we even get to rules. No, we don't even get to rules here. So, um, now it might be in the low-code app builder extended, but you see here creating a rule. So, um, that's more in line with the system architect. So, this is referencing information that they haven't even gotten to, or they may never, they might never even reach for a business architect. So, this might be a little out of scope, especially when it comes to a business analyst. So be careful, for those of you that are just focused on the business architect certification, be careful with this one, or stick with me, and I'll hopefully try to explain it better later, or hope that they will explain it better in the future. Um, but we have to move on. So, tip: an integer field stores only the value that begins at the first non-zero digit. For values that do not require arithmetic calculations, use a text field type. So in other words, they're basically saying, hey, if you have a number, um, your integer is, you know, has like a 9-digit number or something like that, and it starts off with a couple zeros in the very beginning, like, 0005555 777 or something like that, right? Um, for an integer, those first three zeros gets knocked out. It doesn't care about them. So it's just going to go, sorry, we don't need those 000s. You're just going to have to use the, 555777. And that's it. It clears out those zeros, right? So be warned, you know, if you need zero, if you have a number that has zeros at the very beginning, then they recommend, you know, a a text field type. But if you're doing calculations, then well, that's going to be interesting with 000 at the very beginning, right? So just kind of bear that in mind a little bit. Okay, fancy field types. You can also add more complicated field types, such as fancy fields. Users can add an address, and the system responds by displaying a map. The system can also display controls to attach a document or display a field to enter and select an existing user ID. The following table shows a list of fancy field types and the information each type stores. So attachment, document or file. So, if you do this, you could, attach a PDF, attach a Word, attach um, a music file, a video file, whatever. If maybe you want a zip file or something along those lines. Okay, you can arrange this attachment to handle, um, you know, like if they want to attach their resume, for example. You know, um, how it handles afterwards, you're probably gonna have to like most likely leave to your programmer to store that information, obviously, but you know, it's available to be referenced at the very least, right? Then you have location, address input or automatic geolocation. So, you enter in the address and it shows, a map, displaying, where that address is, right? Now, they're showing Google Maps, but I don't know if that is like the official, map application that Pega uses. Okay, they're not really addressing that here on whether or not they use Google Maps as their official location. Um, they probably should in some cases. Or do they give you the choice between, what kind of map applications you want to use? Maybe you don't necessarily want to use Google Maps. Maybe you want to use, some other map application that's out there. Maybe you have a, you know, maybe you have an application yourself that handles, you know, uh, maps. Maybe you're trying to design something that, challenges Google Maps or something like that. I mean, it's possible, right? Um, so maybe you want to use your own application for that. I don't know whether or not Pega gives you that choice though. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Okay, I don't know. Maybe, maybe if Pega, sees this video on YouTube or something like that, or if there's a Pega, um, Pega trainer or an expert in Pega that, has an answer to that, feel free to leave that in the comment in the YouTube video that I'll be posting later. Um, or you can put it in my chat right now if you know the answer right now. I'll say it, but um, obviously, if you put it in the comment in the YouTube, then on my YouTube videos, then um, it it has the potential of helping out others. Not just immediate. I don't know. Oh, we move on. Okay, so check your knowledge with the following interaction. Bank Happy provides three types of loans to bank members: home loans, car loans, and personal loans. For each field name listed below, drag and drop a field type to the appropriate field to capture the user information on the loan application form. Each field type can be used more than once. Okay, so this is what we can drag here. So, you know, currency, for example, can be used for annual income, right? So, number of payments, most likely it's going to be an integer. First name and last name, most likely text single line. You don't necessarily need to use text paragraph. Now, there might be an instance where you might need it, where you might need text paragraph, because let's face it, there are some names that can be pretty lengthy. Now, like I've seen, I worked with individuals from India that had, you know, uh, it felt like, name after name after name after name, and it's like, wow, that's hefty. That I mean, that's standard for them. That's something that's common for them. Um, here in the States, it's like, you know, you see people with first and last name, and that's it. Maybe a middle name. Um, but when you see someone with, you know, I think I saw one person with like it looked like 10 separate names, and they basically, told me that, you know, uh, it could be their first name, it could be their, or, it could be their first name, it could be their last name. It depends, on the context. It depends on the region. So, um, they don't really have like a, they don't necessarily have like an interpretation of like a first and last name when it comes to India. So this is more of a like an American style thought line. So bear that in mind. you know. Okay, loan type. Now, um, this this could be um. Now, I'm gonna use pick list, but here's the thing. It could be a text, single line as well. Okay, it could be a text single line. Like they might have typed out their loan type. They might have typed it out. Okay, it might not have just been a listing of the loan types available to the customer to pick. Ideally, if you have a set number of different loan types that they can only pick from, then yes, you want to use a pick list. Okay. Limit the customer to, what they can do. Okay. So that they don't screw up somewhere, right? Um, because let's face it, not every customer is super smart. Help them out. Give them, what they need to make the right kind of decisions. So leaving it to be a text single line could, you know, they could leave it blank. They could, put in, this application sucks, and, what are you gonna do, right? you know, how are you supposed to interpret this application sucks for a loan type, right? Your system is gonna be like, what is this guy doing? That kind of thing. So that should be correct. Yeah. But bear in mind, um, you might need to change, like I said, you might need to change these up based off of your, um, based on your location. Okay. You might want to use text paragraph, for first and last name or something along those lines. Or you just might want to say, hey, what is your name? Give me, text paragraph. That's it. Leave it there. Because they might want to give their full name, which can be very lengthy. So, all right. But that is going to be it um, for fields. We are going to go ahead and close on down for our Pega study session at this point. Tomorrow we will be studying, uh, the next topic, which is views. Now they're saying that it's only going to be about 5 minutes, so it's probably going to be fairly quick. So we might be going on to calculated values afterwards. But I might need to rush through calculated values as well. Otherwise, I'm going to be kind of splitting calculated values into two separate parts because this is, oh no, this is no, I'm going to have trouble trying to put both calculated values and views in one particular video. Oof. Or at least not in our video. And, I might try to do it, but just bear in mind that the next video, tomorrow's stream, it might be longer than the hour that I'm trying to do for this. So just bear that in mind. Okay. But that's it for our Pega study session. I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to the just chatting webcam only. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to, do the standard YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, you know, bell notifications, so on and so forth. That would help out. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So